All right, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about absolute value. We're going to figure out what that is actually talking about, and we're going to do some solving around absolute value as well. So what does absolute value mean? Absolute value is the distance distance of a number to zero on a number line. So the distance of a number to zero on a number line. So basically, how far is that number from zero on a number line? So there's 0, 5, let's do -3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay. So let's start. And the way that we show absolute value is with these bars. So right here is our first problem. We're saying, what is the absolute value of 5? Well, how far is 5 from the number line? All I need to do is find 5 and count back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 paces to the number line. So the absolute value of 5 is 5. It's pretty obvious when it comes to positive numbers, but when it comes to negative numbers, it gets a little harder to understand. So let's do the absolute value of -3. Again, how far is -3 from 0 on a number line? We know that it's 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps to 0. So the absolute value of -3 is 3. So the pattern here is that the absolute value is always positive. And really a simple trick to think about it is, if there's a negative in the absolute value, all I need to do is turn that number into a positive. So again, it's basically the number of steps away from 0 on a number line. Okay. Why don't you guys do a couple on your own? What's the absolute value of 8, of -8? What's the absolute value of 10? And what's the absolute value of -25? Pause the video and see if you can figure that out. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to figure that out. The absolute value of -8 is 8, because there's 8 steps away from -8 to 0. 10, the absolute value of 10 is 10. It's going to stay the same, stay positive. And the absolute value of -25 is +25. It's how many steps away 25 is from 0. So that is 25 steps. Okay. Now we are going to move into solving when it comes to absolute values. So our first practice problem is 7 equals the absolute value of x plus 2. Okay, so we've got our bars, our absolute value bars around x, and we're trying to figure out what the value of x is to make this statement true. And when it comes to absolute value, there's actually going to be 2 different solutions. So the first thing we need to do is isolate x, really x in the bars, and we're going to do that using SADMAG. So I'm going to take that 2 away, -2, -2. And I'm left with 5 equals the absolute value of x. Here's where it gets interesting. So the distance from x away from 0 is equal to 5. So we need to think about both sides of our number line here. Again, the distance that X is from 0 is 5. So that could be a positive 5 because there's 5 steps between 0 and positive 5, but it could also be negative 5 because there's also 5 steps between negative 5 and 0. So our solutions for this particular problem is going to be X equals negative 5 and X equals positive 5. Those are our answers to this solution. Let's check the solution and make sure this works. And it's going to hopefully make a little bit more sense here once we do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with our original equation. 7 equals absolute value plus 2. And over here, I'm going to plug in the negative 5 for X. That was our first solution. And we actually have to do this twice because we have 2 solutions. 7 equals absolute value sign of 5 plus 2. So what I did here is I took my equation, and instead of X, I plugged in what our solutions are for X. So, and I had to do 2 of them because I have 2 solutions. I got negative 5, plug that in here, and positive 5, plug that in here. Let's evaluate this. 7 equals, well, what's the absolute value of negative 5? Again, it's the number of steps to 0. So that's going to be positive 5 plus 2. 2 comes along. 5 plus 2 is 7. Check. Same thing over here. 7 equals, well, what's the absolute value of 5? If it's positive, it's just going to stay positive. Plus 2 is along for the ride. 5 plus 2 is 7. Check. So we were able to do our first problem there, solving for the value of X. Let's do one more. Let's do 8 equals 2 times the absolute value of X. So this is like saying 2 times the absolute value of X equals 8. Well, the first thing we need to do is isolate the absolute value of X. So I'm going to divide by 2, divide by 2. This is, remember, this is saying 2 times the absolute value of X. So I'm going to divide. 4 equals the absolute value of X. Again, I'm going to get 2 answers here. Because I know that this is saying the distance that X is from 0 is 4. So that could be a positive 4 or a negative 4. And those are going to be my 2 answers, my 2 solutions for this problem. So X is going to equal, another way we can write this is positive or negative 4. That's our answer to this solution here. Let's check and make sure that it works. So I'm going to take my original equation and I'm going to plug in one of our 2 values of X for X here. So 2 times absolute value of, let's just start with positive 4, and 8 equals 2 times the absolute value of negative 4. Well, 8 equals 2, the absolute value of 4 is 4. I'm going to put it in parentheses to show multiplication because we're losing our bars there. And I know that 2 times 4 is 8. Check, that works. And then over here, 8 equals 2. What's the absolute value of negative 4? What's the distance that negative 4 is from 0? It's just 4 steps. So I'm going to leave that as a positive 4 in parentheses. And I got the same thing here. 2 times 4 is 8. Check, we're done. So that's absolute value and solving as well. Thanks. See you soon.